is Beck and welcome to the Rainbow Book Tag. This was a tag created by my friend Marie, so I will link her original post down below. But let's get into the questions. There are about 7 of them. The first question is, Red, name a book that makes you angry. And if you saw my channel last year, you'll know that the answer to that's quite easy for me is Empire of the Vampire, because I gave it 2 stars, unfortunately. But if I'm going to do a bit more of a throwback to make this question a bit more interesting, I'm going to talk about The Painted Man by Peter V. Brett, and that's the first book in his Demon Cycle series. I have a very old video about it that I'd rather not revisit, but at the same time, I just really didn't like this book. I hated the way that it portrayed women, and it had a demon apocalypse in a fantasy world, which is an amazing premise, and you can really pull a lot of tension from that and a lot of relationships and discussions from that. But because it had women portrayed in this in such a negative connotation, every single woman was sexually assaulted and raped, and there was always a constant threat of that. You can have that in a world without being so blasé about it and without presenting it on basically every page with every character. You can make your story dark without having every woman experience sexual trauma. That's really my takeaway from the series, and I gave that book 1 star. So I gave it a lower rating than Empire of the Vampire. Who'd have thought? Question number 2 is Orange. What is a book that gets you fired up? I'm interpreting this as fired up, like excited and passionate, rather than fired up, I want to burn this book. So the thing that I'm going to talk about is Dresden, because I love how energized the Dresden Files makes me feel. There's always something happening. All the characters I'm invested in. It has a wizard detective, and so who wouldn't love a series about a wizard detective? I think it's really great, and I love the pacing, the characters, like I've said. I love all the world building, and I love how the stakes just grow in every single book. It's incredible, and I've not continued the series yet because I'm trying to get my partner to motivate himself to continue reading. So cross your fingers that I could do that, but I'm going to continue the series. Mark my words. But I'm really loving it, and that is definitely a series that gets me fired up. I distinctly remember finishing one of the Dresden Files audiobooks last year and then pelting downstairs because I knew my partner was down there, and I'm like, you need to finish the next book because I need to know what happens. So they really do excite me and fire me up. I think it's a very appropriate answer. Number 3 is Yellow, which is a book that makes you want to sit in the sun and read. I often don't sit in the sun because I turn into a lobster very quickly. But if I had to choose just one, I would do Take a Hint, Danny Brown. This is a contemporary book. It's the companion/sequel to the Get a Life Chloe Brown book, and I'm looking forward to reading both of them because they follow different sisters and their different romances. And I think they're going to be funny and steamy and just great, and very fast paced as well. They're not very long books. So this is very sunny, which is why it came to mind when thinking of this question. Number 4 is Green, and that is a book that makes you feel peaceful. And instead of a book, I'm just going to pick an author, which probably is cheating, but I don't care. It's Becky Chambers, and I think maybe I should just spotlight Record of a Spaceborne Few because that is one of my favorite books of all time. It's got such a cozy feeling to it, and all of her sci-fi works have such a cozy feeling about them, and they both have characters and balance world building and story in a way that makes you like take it on into your heart and then reflect and really relate to it regarding your own identity and your place in the world. And I think she really conveys the differences between all of the different cultures that you experience very, very well. And so because of the way that all the characters were conveyed in Record of a Spaceborne Few and the way that there was a loose plot in the back of it, I just adored that book. And so it makes me feel very peaceful to think about. Number 5 is Blue, and it's a book that breaks your heart. And I really want to steal Marie's answer for this because she said Assassin's Fate, which is the last book in all of the Robin Hobb books. And I very much agree. That book broke my heart in a beautiful way and also in a very ugly way because I was ugly crying at like 1 a.m. But that's beside the point. I love Robin Hobb. Robin Hobb's characters, again, are incredible, and they have such heartbreak and such beauty to them, but they're also so invigorating and heartwarming at the same time. So Robin Hobb, amazing. But also the book that broke my heart, and I've reread it more than 10 times, is The Art of Racing in the Rain. This is a book that I cry at every single time, and I've read it that many times. So obviously it's one that is worth revisiting, and I just love the main character, Enzo. Enzo is a dog, and he's talking about his life as a dog and his master, as well as his master's daughter, and a custody battle. So it doesn't typically sound like a book that I would like because it's got all that family drama in it, but because of the way that Enzo is so approachable and his perspective is so unique and interesting, and he's just got so much heart, I love that book. And yes, I'm probably going to reread it at some point soon and cry all over again, but it will be worth it. Question 6 is Indigo, and that's a book that makes you feel pensive. And I have 2 copies of that book on my shelf. It's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is a book that makes me feel pensive because it really questions Addie's identity, and it questions the relationship between art and identity and how doing things and making things makes you remembered. And I think V.E. Schwab had really interesting morality and themes in that book, because I often just find myself thinking about it, and it's been like a year, I think, since I've read the book. I still think about it now, and I believe that's a strong indicator of when a book speaks to you, because if you're thinking about it and ruminating on it this long after you've read it, then it must be good. Obviously, I gave Addie a 5 stars. And then question number 7, the last one on this tag, is Violet, and it's a book that made you uncomfortable. And for me, this is A Little Life, because even though I read it and gave it like a 4 stars, I think, from memory, it didn't make me ugly cry like a lot of other booktubers I've seen read that book, but it just made me feel out of sorts for a couple of days, and I had to not read or consume any kind of content and just ruminate on my life and wonder why I read a book that was so dark. It follows a group of college kids, and it seems like they're going to be deep lifelong friends, but they all have stuff that's deeply wrong with them, especially our main character. And it's not a book that has like a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a book that is, oh, everything is crap and you're not going to get better, and seeking help is not something that you can do. So it's not a positive book by any means, and because of that, it just felt like torture to read. I don't think I would ever read it again. Knowing how it ends and knowing what the characters are like now, I probably would go back in time and tell past Beck not to read it just because it's so depressing. But if that's your thing, if you like literary fiction as well, you'll probably like it. But just bear in mind that it's got a lot of dark triggers, especially when it comes to eating disorders, mental health, suicidal ideation, all of that. Yeah, those are not fun things to read about, especially all at once in a book. So that is a book that definitely made me uncomfortable, and I feel uncomfortable ending the tag on this. But if you've read any books that make you deeply question themes or deeply question your own identity, or that made you uncomfortable, let me know down below, because I love a book that kind of rocks the boat. But thank you to Marie for making this tag. Thank you for watching this video. Come down and have a chat with me in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.